Antoine, a young and ambitious man, walked daily through the same bustling city street, his thoughts often consumed by professional goals and personal aspirations. He was driven by a desire for success, eager to prove his worth in a world where competition reigned supreme. One morning, as the sun softly pierced through the buildings, Antoine noticed a young woman sitting on the sidewalk. Her clothes were worn, and she held a small cardboard sign that read, "A little compassion, please." Her eyes were downcast, concealing a profound sadness behind her weary face. Intrigued, Antoine slowed his pace. Rarely did he pay attention to passers-by, much less to beggars, but something about the young woman's demeanor caught his attention. He stopped briefly, torn between continuing on his way or turning back. Finally, he approached her slowly, crouching to her level. "Hello," he murmured gently, hoping not to startle her. The young woman looked up, her eyes revealing a mix of vulnerability and a flicker of hope that seemed to captivate Antoine. Moved by compassion, Antoine slipped a few bills into her trembling hand. "Here, this might help a little," he said with a kind smile. "Things will get better. I'm sure of it." She nodded silently, tears welling in her eyes, unable to speak her gratitude. But Antoine felt the depth of her emotion. After a moment of shared silence, he stood up, casting one last glance at the young woman before resuming his walk. Throughout the day, Antoine's thoughts were troubled by the encounter. He kept replaying the vulnerable gaze, a mix of pain and hope in her eyes. He found himself wondering who she was, what had led her to this situation, and how he could help her further. Though brief, the encounter stirred within him a need to understand, to give more than just a few bills. The next morning, determined to learn more, Antoine returned to the same spot, hoping to find her again. There she was, seated in the same place, the same sign in her hands. Relieved to see her, he approached and crouched down once more. "Hello," he said with a smile. "I'm glad to see you again. I've been thinking about you all day yesterday. How are you feeling today?" She looked at him, surprised by his return. "Better, thanks to what you gave me yesterday. It really helped." Antoine reached into his bag and pulled out some supplies. Food, a bottle of water, and a warm coat. "I brought a few things. I wasn't sure what you might need." The young woman accepted the gifts with visible gratitude. "Thank you. That's very kind of you." She paused, hesitating as if debating whether to say more. "My name is Eleanor. Nice to meet you, Eleanor." "I'm Antoine." A silence lingered between them before he gently asked, "Would you like to tell me what happened to you?" Eleanor hesitated but found encouragement in Antoine's kindness. "It's a long story. I grew up in a wealthy family, very wealthy, actually. My parents were respected people, and we never wanted for anything. But everything changed after they suddenly passed away in an accident. I lost everything, and..." Her voice trembled. "The people I trusted betrayed me." Antoine remained silent, respecting the weight of her story. He could feel the pain behind every word, the heavy burden of a life turned upside down. "That's why I'm here, with nothing," Eleanor continued, tears rolling softly down her cheeks. "I lost everything." Moved by her story, Antoine placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry for what you've been through, Eleanor. But I want you to know that I'm here to help you. You're not alone." Determined to help Eleanor rebuild her life, Antoine spent the following days thinking about how to offer her a real opportunity. He knew it wasn't just about giving her money or food, but helping her regain her dignity and independence. After contacting several friends and scouring numerous ads, Antoine finally found an interesting opportunity. A small tailoring workshop in the neighborhood was looking for someone to help with simple tasks like repairing clothes, sorting fabrics, and greeting customers. It was a modest place, but known for its warm atmosphere and support for those in need. The next morning, Antoine returned to see Eleanor. She was in her usual spot, but this time, he noticed a glimmer of hope in her eyes as he approached. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said with a smile. "I have some good news for you." Eleanor looked up, intrigued. "Good news?" Antoine sat down beside her and explained what he had found. "There's a tailoring workshop not far from here looking for someone to help out. Nothing too difficult, but it could be a great opportunity for you to get back on your feet. Eleanor looked at him, deeply moved. You actually looked for a job for me? Yes, Antoine replied softly. I think it could be a good way to start again, surrounded by kind people. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes as she nodded. Thank you, Antoine. I never thought someone would give me such a chance. This is just the beginning, Antoine said with a smile. I'll come with you tomorrow to introduce you. I'm sure you'll enjoy it there. The next day, as promised, Antoine accompanied Eleanor to the tailoring workshop. The owner, a middle-aged woman with a welcoming smile, greeted them both warmly. She explained to Eleanor the tasks she would be assigned and offered her the chance to start the following week. Although nervous, Eleanor felt a deep sense of relief. Thanks to Antoine, she now had a chance to rebuild her life in a safe and supportive environment. The road ahead would still be long, but with this new beginning and Antoine by her side, she knew she had the hope of better days. Weeks passed, and gradually, Eleanor's transformation became evident. The work at the tailoring workshop not only provided her with an income, but also a renewed sense of self-confidence. Every day, she took care of her appearance, arriving at work with clean and well-kept clothes, her hair neatly styled, and her face lit with a smile that was worlds apart from the distress that once consumed her. Antoine continued to visit her regularly, sometimes stopping by the workshop to say hello or inviting her for coffee. Their bond grew stronger day by day, and they began to share more than just casual conversations. They often took walks together through the streets of the city, discovering new places, exchanging confidences, and laughing at the simplest things. Antoine admired Eleanor's sensitivity, her unique way of seeing the world, and on her side, Eleanor cherished Antoine's generosity and kindness, this man who had helped her stand up when everything seemed lost. One evening, after a long day at work, Eleanor invited Antoine to dinner at her apartment. She now lived in a small place she had rented with a salary from the workshop. The apartment was modest but cozy, decorated with taste. Eleanor had prepared a simple yet delicious meal, and they spent the evening chatting, reminiscing about their first meeting and talking about the future. As the evening went on, the atmosphere grew more intimate. Antoine, sitting next to Eleanor on the couch, felt an irresistible surge of tenderness for her. He gently took her hand in his and looked deeply into her eyes. Eleanor, he began, his voice tinged with emotion, I know we've been through a lot together, and I have to tell you that my feelings for you have changed. I've fallen in love with you. Eleanor's eyes lit up with surprise and happiness. She squeezed Antoine's hand tighter, a radiant smile on her lips. Antoine, I feel the same way. You've been there for me when I needed someone the most, and it's because of you that I was able to rise again. I love you too. Their confession of love marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. What had started as an act of compassion had turned into a beautiful love story, where two wounded souls had found healing in each other. A few weeks after their confession, Antoine decided it was time to introduce Eleanor to his parents. Although confident in his feelings, he was apprehensive about his family's reaction. His parents, from an old bourgeois family, had high expectations for their only son. Antoine knew they would be skeptical, even critical, of a woman who did not share their social status or education. On the day of the meeting, Eleanor was nervous but determined to make a good impression. Antoine reassured her, holding her hand as they approached his family's home, a grand house nestled in a chic neighborhood. Upon their arrival, the coldness of the reception was palpable. Antoine's parents greeted them in the large living room, their eyes immediately assessing Eleanor from head to toe. After the usual pleasantries, the conversation began, but it remained distant and frosty. Antoine's parents asked pointed questions, insinuating that Eleanor's past made her unworthy of their son. Instead of eliciting compassion, her difficult journey became a barely veiled subject of disdain. The biting remarks grew more frequent, and despite her best efforts to remain dignified, Eleanor felt her strength begin to fade. Antoine, sitting by her side, clenched his fists, feeling anger rise within him, but he remained silent out of respect for his parents. After a tense dinner, Eleanor and Antoine left the house. Once outside, Eleanor broke into tears, devastated by the humiliation she had just endured. Antoine, deeply sorry, took her in his arms, gently rocking her. "I am so sorry, Eleanor," he murmured. "I should never have put you through that." Eleanor nodded, trying to regain her composure. "It's not your fault, Antoine. I knew it wouldn't be easy." The following days were difficult for Eleanor, who withdrew into herself, haunted by the cruel words of Antoine's parents. However, an unexpected piece of news changed everything. Eleanor discovered that she was pregnant. The announcement of the pregnancy both surprised and worried the young couple. Antoine was thrilled at the idea of becoming a father, but knew the situation was becoming even more complicated, especially given his parents' opposition. Determined to take responsibility and protect the woman he loved, Antoine decided to cut ties with his parents, at least temporarily. He devoted himself entirely to Eleanor, encouraging her and assuring her that they would build their own family, far from judgment and prejudice. Together, they began preparing for the arrival of their child, turning this challenge into a source of strength that deepened their love and determination to overcome whatever obstacles lay ahead. The months passed, and Eleanor and Antoine focused on getting ready for their baby. Their relationship grew stronger every day, and despite the challenges, they found a harmonious balance in their life together. Eleanor continued working at the tailoring workshop, while Antoine did his best to support her emotionally and financially. They rented a small apartment, modest but cozy, where they felt safe, far from disapproving eyes. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Eleanor gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, whom they named Lucas. The birth of their son was a moment of intense joy, a true blessing that erased the pain of the past. Antoine and Eleanor were overjoyed, deeply moved by the new life they had created together. As they adapted to their new life as parents, an unexpected event disrupted their routine. One day, while Eleanor was caring for Lucas in their apartment, a man knocked on the door. He was a lawyer, a middle-aged man impeccably dressed and carrying a briefcase. Intrigued, Eleanor invited him in. "Good day, Madame Eleanor," the lawyer began in a calm voice. "My name is Maître Lemoyne. I represent the firm handling your parents' legal affairs." Eleanor looked at him in surprise. She had no memory of her parents, having been separated from them at a very young age, and she never imagined there could be any connection left to them. "My parents," she repeated incredulously. "But they passed away long ago, and I've never known anything about them." The lawyer nodded understandingly. "I understand your surprise, madam. It turns out that your parents left behind a substantial inheritance. For various reasons, it was never passed on to you. However, after extensive research, we were finally able to establish your connection to them and locate this inheritance." Eleanor was stunned. She had never imagined that such news would ever come her way. An inheritance? But what does that mean? "It means, madam, that you are the heir to a significant sum of money, as well as several properties. Your parents intended for you to have all of this, but due to legal complications and your disappearance at a young age, it was delayed. Now, we are in a position to transfer to you what is rightfully yours." Eleanor struggled to believe what she was hearing. After all the hardships she had endured, this news seemed unreal. The lawyer handed her the necessary documents and explained in detail what it all entailed. When Antoine came home that evening, he found Eleanor sitting at the kitchen table, still in shock. She recounted everything that had happened, and Antoine, though astonished, embraced her, overjoyed at the miracle that had come into their lives. This unexpected inheritance completely changed their circumstances. Not only were they able to afford a more comfortable home to raise their son, but Eleanor also fulfilled her dream of opening her own tailoring shop, a place where she could fully express her creativity and skills. Their future, once uncertain, transformed into a horizon full of promise. Together, they built a life where love, trust, and newfound fortune played a central role. Eleanor's painful past gave way to a new chapter, a story of rebirth and prosperity, where she, Antoine, and their little Lucas thrived in peace and happiness. Thus concludes the story of Eleanor and Antoine, a tale of resilience, courage, and renewal. This narrative reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of hope, ready to surface at the most unexpected time. Through their love and determination, Eleanor and Antoine overcame obstacles, transforming trials into strengths to build a bright future. Eleanor's long-hidden inheritance symbolizes the justice of fate, rewarding those who persevere with kindness and integrity. This story inspires faith in the power of love and the magic of second chances.